Alright, so we got the truck up on stands, and I probably should have done a quick video while it wasn't on the stand, because you can grab onto the tie rod here and see if there's any play just by wiggling it back and forth, and you'll be able to see if there's any play from here. Or for this vehicle, because you have, this is the outer tie rod, this half, and then here's that kind of like sleeve, and then this is the inner, and it connects to here, so it's pretty easy to remove. It's literally going to be one bolt here, and then you got a little pin here, I forgot what it's called, but you take it out and it's a castle nut, so you can just remove the nut. If it doesn't come off, if the tie rod doesn't pop out, just reverse the castle nut, put it back on, and you can hammer it out. If you need to check your idler arms, these guys right here, again, you can just pull on it and you'll know. Your pitman arms, same thing. You can inspect your lower control arm and your upper control arm, this guy over here, and for us this is the sway bar. I think we call it the sway bar arm. Basically it holds it together. I changed it on the other side a few years ago, so I'm going to change it on this side as well, because as you see the bushings are going on it. Inspect your boots for any cracks. One giveaway is if you're taking a look on the inside and you can see there's lots of grease coming out when you grease the vehicle on its grease nipple points. If grease is kind of spilling out a lot, you might have a crack, so make sure you inspect it. The purpose of greasing it often is so that you can push out the old grease, and when you push out the old grease it will be dirty and a little bit gritty. If it's excessively dirty and gritty, it probably means you have a rip. So again, for me, I know I have to change this tie rod, because when it was on the ground, tires on the ground, not lifted up, I was able to have about a 1/4 inch play. Now the other way you can check it is to jack up your vehicle, as is done, and shift the tire. So control arm issues, meaning the bushings or the idler arm, if you move your tire vertically, meaning up and down, and if it moves, then you know you have a problem there. And as I mentioned, I know I have a tie rod issue, so like this, you can see I'm able to move. That's probably a good 1/3 of an inch actually, and that's why I get some wobbles sometimes. Up and down, I have no play. If I go sideways, like this is pretty tight, as you see. Alright folks, in another video I was showing how this tool set, 30, 40, let's say $50 Canadian just to be safe, 95 piece Motor Master, or Mastercraft, sorry, from Canadian Tire. So those of you in the States, I think you have Husky or stuff at Walmart basically. Here's the 1/2 inch set, but anyways, what I'm trying to say is I was trying to use the cheap tool set to do all my work as encouragement to you guys watching on YouTube to do your own work. You don't have to spend hundreds of dollars in tools. That being said, anytime you have to buy a specialty tool, be careful, because that could bring you up on a lot of money. So if you are already planning to do certain type of work, take a look at the tool sets you need, and if there's a kit that's just, you know, 20, 50, maybe $100 more, it might be worthwhile to buy that kit, so you're not buying little individual sockets and costing you an arm and a leg. The other reason why I'm showing you guys the 1/2 inch is because when you come to the tie rod job, trying to use a 1/4 inch to get the castle nut off, well, you know, I felt the wrench flex, so I had to break out the 1/2 inch tool and use the breaker bar, and literally with just a little bit of, this is already loose, not undone, and now I'm doing the inside tie rod. As you can see, it's attached, but I'm also doing this bit of video to show you that if you can, it's good to maybe have a slightly smaller socket, because as this is coming out, I can see I'm not going to be able to get it out because it's already touching. So I gotta think about this one and hope that it's loose enough to get it by hand, but I don't think it will be, so I'm gonna have to switch to a wrench. Oh, sorry. And because I'm doing the whole rod, I'm not touching the sleeve, which means I'm gonna have the exact length that it's at right now to do the new outer tie rod, the inner tie rod, and that way the alignment will be, within tolerance, and then I can get it to the shop. Alright, I figured rather than using my pickle fork, I'm gonna do an old trick. As you see, I took the nut off already, the castle nut, and I reverted it, and put it on. And what you can do now is use a mallet and hit the top, and it should pop out. Can't find my mallet, so I'm going to use some wood to soften the hit of my hammer. That being said, be very careful you don't hammer your own rotor. Alright, so here's the outer tie rod detached. I could not do the method I told you guys about with the castle nut because I have a tiny little hammer. I don't know where my mallet went in the bigger hammer, nor was I going to use the axe. So I used the pickle fork. For those of you who have never used a pickle fork, it's a really cheap tool, $30-ish, I think. What you do is take the flush side and put it against what will not be moving. So in my case, it's going to be this control arm here, part of the control arm. So it's going to be here, and you just hammer away at it, and it's like a wedge. So it'll just wedge out the tie rod. Alright, now I have to do the inside bit and then put on the new one. Alright, I figured I'd show you guys a little bit of the inner tie rod. Here's the rotor moved out of the way. Outer tie rod is loose. There's the pickle fork, and I'm hammering it in between the inner tie rod and the rest of the steering rack to separate it. And there's the nut. It just won't come out. So we'll just keep hammering away at it. Alright folks, so here's the old tie rod and the new tie rod next to it. You want to basically screw in your tie rod's ends. So this is the outer, this is the inner. You want to screw it in to match the same length and then get it back in. And then make sure you put in the little nipples and then grease it up. So this is like a 45-minute job, and I'm saying 45-minute because it depends with how stubborn some of your ends are. I'll be honest, it took me about 20 minutes to get this side out, this side being the inner tie rod, the one that was in there. So, wishing you the best of luck. Alright, so here's my torque wrench, and I need to find where my smaller one is, because it's going to be hard to get into the inner tie rod. Anyway, your clamp bolts here are supposed to be about 13 foot-pounds. Over here on the knuckle, anywhere between 30-35 foot-pounds. The inner rod, tie rod, to the relay rod, which is like the rest of your steering component, that should be 35 foot-pounds. Alright, so at least I found my other torque wrench. Not the one I wanted to use, but at least it's short enough that it can fit. So everything is torqued down to spec. And I forgot to mention to put on the nipple. You have one for the outer tie rod. The inner tie rod, unfortunately, is coming in from this angle, and they are 7mm to be able to screw them on. So now I just have to grease them on. This thing is snug. It doesn't help that I'm shaking something while holding on the camcorder, but it's completely fixed. No wiggle whatsoever. So that makes it nice and tight. When you're all torqued up, make sure you put in the cotter pin and bend it all around. It'll be on for both sides. If you're going to do the sway bar, here's how it looks like when it's new, and that's how it looks like when it's old. Oh, and this is how it looks like when it's broken. Apparently I kept the part from last time. So you got basically the screw, the rod, and the sleeve, and that's exactly what we see here. Now I tried cranking it left and right to see where I can avoid that touching, but I realized it probably doesn't matter because I'm going to go from underneath, and when you do that, it'll shorten the bolt because you'll be pulling it out downwards. Right, just going to take a video. Basically, you got bushings between the two upper sway bar arms and the washers on the top and on the bottom. It's a 13mm on the top, and I'm using a 14mm socket on the bottom. Likewise, washer on the top and then a bushing, and then I'm going to assume underneath there'll be a bushing and a washer, kind of like the newer one. So, on the other side, and now I remember I left one of the new bushings out because, as you see, this is basically snug together, and there's no protruding part of the rod, the bolt, unlike the old style. So I think what happened was, with the new bushing, I just couldn't get enough bite on the nut to feel like it'd be safely and securely screwed in. So I used a older washer on the top to give me a little bit of space back so I can get down hard on it. We'll find out what happens on this side. I've been banging away at this sway bar for the longest time, and basically I got all the washers loose, but the sleeve itself is basically rusted to that rod, and I've tried using like liquid wrench and all that good stuff to try to make it come apart. So just to be clear with what I'm telling you is, this is going to be bottom up, and with the screw, this one is snapped off and I still have it, and then the sleeve basically goes in there. So it's rusted on, and I can also see last time when I changed on the driver's side, and I did this like years ago, I see I had to cut into here because that's where I was holding. However, on this guy, I feel like it's holding in many places. So that bottom washer is loose. The very, very bottom, I don't care because it'll come out with a bolt. That's loose, and there's nothing on the top. But it still spins together, and I can't grip it, I can't tear it apart. So after I think almost 2 hours of working away at it, and I kid you not, 2 hours, I think it's time to go use some heat. So we'll see how that goes. There it is, finally out. So to get it out, and I kid you not, I end up, let me just put the light on somewhere. Where is it? Vice grip. So I vice gripped the sleeve, not too tight. Of course I had heated it all up to make it a little softer. And holding on the sleeve, what I did was I just kept twisting and turning underneath, which is a really hard position to do that, but kept doing that to loosen up all the rust. Took a long time, and then I just kept hammering at it, making sure everything was loose. And I was fortunate enough that I had the previous bolt. Otherwise, if you don't have it, go to a depot store or something like that and get something that will fit into the sleeve, so you can hammer it through until you kind of have the yin-yang kind of thing, and then you can pull and get it out. So finally it is out. I lost one at the washer and the bushing inside the control arm, but whatever, it'll do. I'm gonna put on the new one now. Alright guys, here we are the next morning with the sway bar almost completely in. I realized, well actually I did order that part, but I forgot to pick it up, and that's going to be your sway bar bushing. So this is your sway bar. That's your sway bar control rod, which keeps the sway bar and your lower control arm, or the whole control arm to be honest, but it's attached to the lower control arm together. So when you're turning, it keeps the wheel down on the ground. So if you're struggling to put that on, a lot of people will tell you it's actually best not to even raise the vehicle, because this way everything is in the same play, meaning tires on the ground. It's kind of hard to get in there with the tires, because then you're going to be crawling in from underneath here. So raise up the vehicle, it separates it, but just remember, this is a sway bar, so it tilts and swifts. You're probably going to try to turn the wheel driver's side, passenger side, looking for that articulation to make it perfectly fit. All you have to do, go to the other side, put in your jack, lift the wheel a little bit, and when you do that, it's going to swivel the sway bar, alright, which is connected. Duh, right? But hey, I'm just sharing just in case you guys are having one of those moments. And it'll move the sway bar up, allowing you to put the rod through, and then as you lower it slowly, so release the jack slowly, make sure the rod stays, because remember, it goes from down up. So if you lose it all, you're going to have to do it again. And then once you get enough space, then you can put in your bushing and the nut. Now remember, I was showing you guys how, if you look in the video, the old one, the rod is much longer. So I'm hoping I can still put in that last bushing on the top. The tire lug nuts are loosely on, and the top bolt for my sway bar still needs to be put on. But here we go. The wheel is nice and snug with that new tie rod. Alright, so for the sway bar, I think it's easier if I lower the vehicle, and I might be able to get that top nut on. Alright, here we are under the truck. with the wrench on top. The new bolt is 14, the old ones were 13. And I'm using the old bushing on the top again. Sorry, it's hard to see from this angle, but anyways, take my word for it. I have literally like 2 millimeters showing on the stud from the bolt that goes from bottom up. But I'm going to tighten it down till basically most of the instructions, and no instructions came with this, but I just know it from last time and talking to other folks. You want to tighten it down until you see those bushings compress just a little bit, and then supposedly back off a quarter of the turn. I usually don't. I just keep wrenching until I see they compress a little bit, and then I stop. Alright, and I'll go take it for a test drive and see if I need an alignment. I probably will too. Alright, so we went for a test drive, and that tie rod with the sway bar control rod, I have to think about that one, made it very, very tight, extremely tight. I am out of tolerance, but it's not shaking like crazy. The steering wheel was pretty much straight for me before. Like, this is actually straight, but this is how I go straight in the vehicle. So now it really has to be like this. Before I had this much play, I kid you not, like I could have this much play and the vehicle would still be going straightish. When I hit the brakes, sometimes I would pull, how do I have to correct it? Gosh, I already forgot. It's just natural after, you know, it's amazing how us humans, we adapt to things, so we kind of just adapted to air. Now it's really, really good. Hit the brakes and we're braking straight, which is great. So I will bring it into alignment because I want this fixed. Yay! Alright, any questions, please post below. I'll be more than happy to answer them. And because of all the cedar pollination, I'm going to have to clean our vehicle, the black one over there, the Orlando, this one, because you can see it's super dirty, and the Volvo, and then maybe we can finally start working on the Camaro. Hi! Oh, looks like Madeline's going out.
Hello, Dada.
Hello. There's Janice and Madeline. The difficult thing about doing the work myself now is that Madeline wants some of my attention, and I normally have her very involved, but given that the vehicle was up on stands and I had sharp objects, like the stand part's not too bad because obviously if it's not safe, I shouldn't be under there either. It's just if she bumps into anything, I mean, there's been those freak stories about jack stands that unfortunately failed when someone bumped in. You know, now as a father, you just kind of think, hey, let's be more careful. So I didn't have her as involved, more so because of all the rusty metal bits and so on. Anyway, that's that. You know, vehicle runs great. It's nice and tight now. There's other things I know I need to change. I mean, I bought the lower control arm bushing and the upper one, and I would like to do, my other arms are okay, but you know, back in the day when I really didn't have a lot of expenses, a child, daycare, I would constantly be changing stuff because I use this vehicle for everything. Everything from, it was slammed at one point by 2 inches, and then I went back to stock height, and then I went the front is 4 inches, the back is 5 to 6 inches because of those Adelies. It was 6 inches, but probably by now they've compressed a little bit, so it's a little shorter. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is I've used it for everything, you know, the off-roading to fishing, which is part of the off-roading, camping, towing, hauling. This vehicle runs pretty quick. I got speeding tickets to prove for it. That's why I had to do the tune-up. So anyway, if you like this video, please like it, subscribe. I usually don't ask for subscribers, but now given how YouTube works, it'd be great if you guys can help me out. I get more than 80,000 hours of viewing per year, but I just don't have the subscribers. Every little bit helps because I can put it towards our second child or something like that, you know. Diapers, formula, something, yeah. Thanks, guys.